In this tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to create this tunnel animation using After Effects. Now I should mention, a lot of this code came from Desmond over at No Sleep Creative. I did actually contact him on Instagram. He was more than happy for me to share this once more in kind of the project that I used it for and the animation that I made with it. So I would highly recommend you check out his channel as well. So in After Effects, the first thing we want to do is create a new composition, and I'm just going to call this tunnel anim, and I'm just going to make it 10 seconds long. I'm going to add a solid, and we're just going to call this background, and then I'm going to add my shape in as well. Now I'm just going to use a square for this. You can use any shape you like, it really doesn't matter. So I'm going to double click my rectangle tool, and under my rectangle properties, I'm just going to change this to 800 by 800, and then I'm going to select rectangle 1 and press Ctrl D to duplicate that, and I'm going to change this to 500 by 500. I'm then going to select shape layer 1, go to the add and merge paths, and then I'm going to change this merge paths to exclude intersections. I'm going to rename this to parent, and then I'm going to duplicate this and bring it below, and we're going to call this one child, and I'm just going to change the color of it as well. Now what I want to do is add 3 slider controls to this parent null. So I'm just going to go over to slider on my effects and presets, and I'm just going to duplicate this 3 times. I'm going to call the first one Z distance, second one rotation, and third one will be scale. Now on our child control, we're going to press P to bring up position. I'm going to alt click the stopwatch. We're going to drag and pick whip this to our parent layer. So what we need to do is lock this effects panel here by going up and pressing this padlock. And now we're going to go back to our expression, and I'm just going to delete this, and we're going to pick whip our parent layer. And the first thing we want to do is type in main and then equals. We're just going to create a variable. So this is our main, and it's referencing the parent layer. I'm going to do dot transform, and we want dot position, and we're going to add a semicolon as well. Now below this, we want to create our multiplier, and this is what everything is going to work off. So we're going to type in mult, and this is equal to, and we're going to drag this to our Z distance slider and put a semicolon. And now we need an offset variable as well. So we're going to create offset, and this is going to equal, in parentheses, we're going to do index minus our original layer. We're going to do dot index. So it's taking the index of this layer, minusing our index of our parent layer, which is our index layer over here, this number here. So it'll be 2 minus 1. And then we want to times this by our mult value, and that'll be our multiplier, which is linked to our slider. Now we need to put all these in an array. Now what I've noticed here, so I actually haven't made these a 3D layer yet. So I'm going to select them both and press the 3D layer button by clicking this cube here. Back to my expression, and I'm going to type in main plus, and we're going to do an array. So we want square brackets, and we want 0 on the X position, 0 on the Y position, and then offset. So it's our main value, which is our original transform, position transform, and we don't want to affect the X or the Y, but we want to plus our offset, and our offset is the index times our multiplier, which is linked to our slider. And now if I change my Z distance slider, you'll notice it affects the layer. So now we have the base set up, and all we have to do is copy this to our scale and rotation as well, and change a few things. So I'm going to copy this expression. I'm going to open up our rotation, and on our Z rotation, I'm going to alt click the stopwatch and paste our expression in. I'm going to reopen this so we can see it. And then what we want to do is change transform position to transform.z rotation, capital R. And then again down here, because this time it's only one value on the Z rotation, not 3 or 2, we just want to do main plus offset. And I've actually forgot to change the slider here as well. So we need to go back to our multiplier and change this value to our rotation slider. And we can click off that, and now I'll be able to rotate the layer as well. So now we need to add this to our scale as well. And I'm just going to alt click on the stopwatch, and I'm going to paste that in again. All I'm going to do is on the transform position, we're going to change this to transform scale. Then we're going to change our slider control once more. And this time we're going to pick whip it to the slider control for the scale. And at the bottom, it's 3 values because we've got an X, a Y, and a Z. And we want the scale to be affected on all of them. So we're going to type in offset, offset, and offset. So the offset will affect the X, the Y, and the Z. And now I can change the scale of each one as well. So now what will happen is when we duplicate these childs, we can go back to our parent and just change the distance and rotation of them maybe drop the scale a little bit, and you start getting some really cool patterns. So once you're happy with your base setup, it's time to make it look nice and actually animate it. So what we're going to do is we're going to animate these sliders on the main layer here. Now I'm just going to read you my child's. I have come back to this a day later. So on our main, I'm just going to keyframe the start here by clicking the stopwatch. I'm going to go down to 4 seconds, and I'm going to put in my original values. So I think it was 800, I think it was 20, and I think we had 5 on the scale as well. I'll go -5 there. We get this cool looking vortex type tunnel animation, which obviously is quite nice, but I think we can make this better. So I'm going to ease this. I'm just going to add some quick easing by pressing F9, and I'm just going to go into my speed graph for these, and I'm just going to pull the end keyframe out, and I'm going to go to my first keyframe and pull that out a little bit as well. So we now have this kind of eased motion on the tunnel. Looks kind of cool. Now we kind of need to be able to go down this and actually see what's going on. So I'm actually going to add some layer styles to this first. So what we're going to do is click our main layer. I'm going to right click it and go to layer styles. And the first thing I want to add is a gradient overlay. Now it's already added my colors from before from my other setup. So I will cover these if you want to copy them. It is just a normal gradient overlay with a blue to pink, and then it's reflected, and I've just changed the angle, kind of modified that. Everything else is the same, and it gives you this nice cool gradient. Now feel free, of course, to use your own colors. I'm then going to add another layer style, and this time I'm going to add an inner glow. So we're going to add that on, and again it's taken my original values, but it is a sort of blue color to kind of give us that highlight. And then I've just sized this up to make it a little bigger around the edges, and we could actually put a bit of noise in this as well to make it look a little nicer. Bring that noise value up to 10 maybe, give it a more stylized effect. And you can sort of play around with these. It'll obviously depend on the shape you've got as well. I quite like having a softer kind of appearance to all of this. Now I want to add a drop shadow as well. So I'm just going to turn on my alpha channel so I can see kind of how this will be affected, and turn off my solid at the bottom. Right click, layer styles, and drop shadow. And again, it's remembered my settings. I'm just going to unparent these. That was just a controller I set up for animating my drop shadow. I just parented them to a null, so I could kind of change them all and animate them. Now that's a bit strong to me, especially when we lay them up. I'm going to drop that down to 20%. And again, it's quite a big drop shadow. I don't want too much on display. Could just up the distance a little bit. I don't want it too big, but we'll leave it as we are, as we can always come back and change it. Now I'm going to select these layer styles and just press Ctrl C to copy those. Just going to select all of my children and then paste that on as well. And now we'll have a full kind of drop shadow effect, and we can actually see what's going on in our tunnel. Now you can actually see why I parented my drop shadow to a main controller, and you kind of get this look. So what we could do is also create a drop shadow slider on this layer as well. So I just create a slider control, and we just call that drop shad opacity. What we can do is go to our drop shadow, alt click the stopwatch on opacity, and just pick whip that to our slider. And then we can just copy expression only on that, and we can paste that to all our children as well. So that on my main now should be able to affect all of those. Now it may not have worked because it may be it's referencing the original slider on its own. So what I'm actually going to do is go to my child and layer styles and drop shadow, and in this one we need to reparent it to our main slider. I'm just going to reparent it there so it references the absolute name and the absolute path, and then I want to copy this expression only and then paste that to our children, and now it all references this main slider. So we can lock this as well, and we can just then animate this from 0 along with our increment, and we can turn it up by the end to maybe 20, and it'll just animate our opacity so we don't have that big kind of blocky shadow at the start, and it creates a much nicer look. So now with our layer styles, we get a really cool looking tunnel, and we get this drop shadow animating as well, and we get this cool looking vortexy type thing. And I really like how this looks. Now, obviously you could be saying, well, why wouldn't I do this with a shape layer and repeaters? It's a much easier setup. And the benefit of this is we can actually fly through it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new camera, a layer new, and camera, and hit OK. And now the way I like to work with cameras, I don't actually like how the camera positions and things work, and when you try and move around, I just hate them. So what I actually do is I always parent my camera to a null. So I'm going to create a new null object and parent my camera to that, And I'm just going to rename that to cam control. Now, if I made this layer 3D, what we can do is keyframe our position, go to 4 seconds, and we're just going to fly down this tunnel. And this is the benefit with the shape layer method that you may have seen. You don't have this freedom to kind of drag a camera down as it's a 2D layer. You kind of just have to scale stuff up, and it's more of like an infinite loop. Now, we've actually got a lot of children here. This is a way bigger kind of increment than I think than my original setup had, but I really like how this looks. So, and then once more, I'm going to ease these. So I'm going to select them both, press F9, go to the speed graph, and I'm just going to drag these out so we get a similar kind of influence on them. Now, of course, if you have ease copy or something like that installed, you can just copy your original easing, so it's all kind of nice. And then we'll have this really nice kind of flow through where we kind of zoom through the tunnel. Now we can turn our back solid back on. And maybe we just add a gradient ramp to this. I just create a ramp and we create a radial ramp, swap those colors and maybe make a dark blue. And then I'm just going to create a new adjustment layer as well. And on this, I'm going to add a glow. Now that's a bit high, so let's just turn down our glow radius maybe to 5 and up the threshold, and the intensity will bring down to maybe like 0.2. We just want a bit of glow on there. Feel free to kind of play with all these settings. Maybe actually up the radius again. Maybe it was my intensity to start with. So that in itself, if you have deep glow or something like that instead, chuck that on, it'll create such a difference. And just get some noise on as well. Keep with that theme of noise we've got going on, maybe 5%. Just give it a bit of grain. And then if you wanted to, you could add some posterized time to this and maybe set that to 12 FPS. You kind of get a really cool look. Now that's probably way overexposed on the glow to start with. So again, we could take that glow, parent that to a slider, and sort of control that through our keyframes as well. But I just think this setup offers so much flexibility, and you can do some really cool stuff with it. And if you want to learn more After Effects, you can watch this video here.